Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Wednesday, June 4th. Derek VanRiper, Sarris, and Jed Lowry here with you. On this episode, we discuss the Major League debut of Jac Caglianone. He arrived with the Royals on Tuesday night. We'll dig into some takeaways from Game 1 of what should be a long and productive big league career. We got some baseball news you should know from around the league to get to. We're going to dig into park factors a little bit later on in the show. Do park factors properly and completely capture park effects? A big question we've been wrestling with a long time on this show. Get a lot of thoughts on that. And time permitting, we saw a pretty unusual play in a college game this weekend that we're going to break down. So we'll talk about collisions and trying to make some rules that might make things a little better. So we'll save that for a little bit later on in the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to smash the like button, especially if you like the shine on my forehead. I'm extra clean after my time off. Thanks to everybody that pitched in extra while I was gone. You guys sounded great last week. It helped me pass the time as I was packing and unpacking boxes. So I am grateful for all of your help. I did get to see a little bit of Jac Caglianone last night, and it's an interesting thing to look at a debut now compared to the way we looked at debuts even, 15, 20 years ago, because we have a lot more granular information. It was 0 for 5, but with 4 fire emojis. That's pretty good, right? 4 fire emojis, 4 hard hit balls. And I feel like that's a good, modern, how was your debut really? How was your game really? Did you hit the ball hard? The interesting thing, too, is that I thought watching him take the very first pitch he saw and hack at it, he was just looking first pitch fastball. Like watching that, he's like, I'm taking a rip. I'm looking first pitch fastball. He fouled it off and
announce my presence with authority.
Yeah, I'm just gonna get that first swing off just to break the ice, and everything else will feel good after that. But what did you guys see watching Jac in that debut on Tuesday? I know you've been excited. You've been talking about him for a few weeks now as someone you've been waiting on, hoping he'd come up and make an impact right away.
Well, yeah, 80 bat speed right off the bat, just sort of, elite bat speed. And I think that was pretty obvious from the minute you saw the thighs and the swing. and then, it was also set against Gerard Encarnacion just came back for the Giants. And my son and I watched him have a 100% swing rate for his first game back, and the announcers are trying to give him leeway, being like, well, you didn't really have spring, he kind of hurt himself, he's trying to get back. And Gerard's swings were pretty terrible across the board. It was like 100%. He swung at pitches that were 3 feet out of the zone. And that's just, that's a certain level of discipline he has. He's also behind. Jac has been playing. I just want to throw this up. These are the swings outside the zone for Jac. It's just a freeze. I didn't think that was that bad. These are shadow zone. That's that first one on the left is a 95 mile an hour fastball. It's like 3-4 inches above the zone, but some people can hit that for homers. That's not an impossible pitch to hit. And the other one was 2 inches off the black. And here they are in real life. So, I didn't think he was aggressive. He swung a lot. He made contact in everything he swung at. He hit balls really hard. And I don't think that he was so aggressive that I was like, oh God, this guy has no idea what's going on, and this pitch could have been a double. It's 79 mile an hour curveball in the outside corner. Pretty good pitch. Victor Scott, it's only an 80%, catch probability, so it's not like he made a huge play, but 90% is supposedly where the line is for gimmies or whatever. So that was he had to make a play on the ball. It could have been a double if there was a worse defender up out there, and it was well hit, and it was a 79 mile an hour curveball on the outside corner, so it was a pretty good pitch. So I think it was all positive. I mean, I have a little bit of, if we want to pick the nits, I can get to, but I also wanted to get Jed's opinion on that start for Jac Caglianone.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the guy that I've been in the box, right? I know what those emotions are, and for him to take the swings that he did in his debut, And you know, that first pitch, it looked like the one at the top of the zone that you showed there, that was that was his first pitch that he saw in the big leagues right there. I mean, the emotions of that, like that's exactly what, you know, pitchers are trying to do. They know he's fired up. They know he's a big prospect. They know who this kid is. They're going to challenge him and, you know, see if he's going to chase. And so of course he's going to swing at a pitch that's slightly above the zone. So I was thoroughly impressed. I mean, the two swings, obviously people are saying he got robbed of 2 hits, and I couldn't agree more. For him to be able to have the bat control and the presence to take a curveball that he's slightly out front of, but have the mechanics to stay through that ball and drive it into the right center field gap, and then take a fastball and hit a rocket the other way. You know, you don't want to get too high or too low on one game. But you know, if I were betting, I would say this kid's going to have a really good career, and if he stays healthy, it could be great.
What was it like your first time? You remember your first time in the box?
I remember talking to my grandma after the game, and she said that she was really nervous, but then when she saw how hard I was chewing my gum, she's like, I was. So yeah, it was in Cleveland. And I had a couple games in Boston to, you know, I was available and on the roster, but didn't play. Francona told me on the plane that I was starting at third base the first game in Cleveland, and I remember there was a foul ball, and I didn't have a ton of experience at third base. I had played you know, a little bit in AAA before they called me up, but there was a foul ball that was probably 20 rows up, if not more, and I went sprinting over to the wall. And like I was going to catch it, and I walked back, and I can't remember who the umpire was, but he looks at me. He knows it's my debut, and he says to me, "You thought you were going to catch that, didn't you?" I said, "Man, it sure felt like it."
Almost got that one, kid.
I mean, like I said, must have been 20 rows up, but it felt like I was going to jump over the wall and run up the bleachers to catch it.
It seems like it's one of those days.
Pitcher?
Yeah.
Paul Bird.
Oh.
Yeah, I missed a double in my first at bat by like 3 inches down the left field or right field line. Ended up striking out on like 9 pitches. I had an RBI ground out, and then I got my first hit in lefty. Oh shoot, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name right now. Lefty reliever ground ball in the 6-hole, 2 RBIs.
Nice.
Rafael Perez.
Yeah, there it is. Yep.
I was looking at the box score for this game. Let's see how many players Eno can name that started in that game. It was a Boston-Cleveland matchup, April 15th, 2008. Jed can help him out after Eno goes for a bit. I mean, start with the Red Sox. Who else was in that lineup with Jed that day?
Jason Varitek, Red Sox?
He played. He didn't start that game, but he played in that game. Yeah, so that's the right era.
Was Pedroia still there?
Oh, yeah. Pedroia had 3 hits that day.
God, who was the shortstop?
You're going to have a hard time remembering the shortstop. You should definitely know who the 3 and 4 hitters were.
Cabrera?
Nope.
Jeez. Even the outfielders. Johnny Damon?
Nope.
No. I'm just gonna embarrass myself. Jed's like, I remember every single person on the field.
No, not everybody. Not everybody.
All right, who else was there, Jed?
Julio Lugo.
Yeah, Julio Lugo was the shortstop. He had 3 hits that day too.
Nice.
Coco Crisp.
Yeah, he led off.
Oh, he was the center fielder.
Yeah. Ortiz was. I'm pretty sure David was DHing that day.
Yep.
Was JD Drew in the starting lineup that day?
He was not.
Was Ellsbury?
Yep, Ellsbury was in.
Oh, that's
okay.
Right,
Ellsbury. Let's see. I was playing third, so that means Mike Lowell was not in the game. I think
correct.
Euclid, right? Euclid was at first.
Euclid is the first base.
Euclid was at first.
God, I should have done way better than this.
And then Manny would have been in left, right?
Manny was in left. Yeah, and it was
That's a
Kevin Cash
classic
that got
game.
the start behind the plate.
Oh yeah, Cat. That's right. Yep.
Is that
I
like
hope-
a year or two after they won it all, or
That was 08. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was the after the 07 World Series.
How about the guys on the Cleveland side? You mentioned Paul Bird started that game, and the first hit
I
was
had no
against Rafael
chance.
Perez that Jed had.
Yeah.
There were two other guys
Yeah.
that pitched in the game. Extremely obscure relievers that you probably won't remember, but there's some pretty interesting players on the Cleveland side that were in that lineup. It was a quality team.
Who were the other pitchers?
The other pitchers were Jorge Julio and Jensen Lewis, who actually played
Oh,
in
yeah.
fantasy baseball.
Lewis,
I
yeah, of
remember
course.
Jensen Lewis.
Yeah, I think isn't he doing games for Cleveland now? I think he's doing TV for them.
Yeah, believe so.
Yeah. Let's see. I remember. Oh, you know who the guy I played against all through the minor leagues too was Asdrubal Cabrera. Was he there? I
Yep.
can't remember.
He was there.
He had
For the
some
second.
great years in the big leagues. Holy cow.
He was like a switch hitter with like power and contact. He was pretty good.
No, yeah, he had some great years.
Just a little bit slow, right? He's a bit slow.
Yeah, no, yeah. Not getting paid, not getting paid to run.
Yeah, right. Like a kind of like a Wilmer Flores a little bit, but like switch hitter.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Was Pronk there? Travis
was there.
Hafner?
Oh,
Travis Hafner was there. He was their DH. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a Hafner, V-Mart, Grady Sizemore, Johnny
Grady
Peralta.
Sizemore,
Yeah, solid squad that they had at that time back in 08.
Yeah. I know Ryan Garco was on that team in 08. I don't know if he was in the lineup that day. He was. So that was a college teammate. So he was he was a college teammate. So he was I remember like walking in
GM of the Tigers or something. He's like
more or
GM
less
or something. Yeah.
So he I remember walking in my freshman year. He was a senior, and I walked into the Stanford locker room, and I saw Ryan Garco, and I was like, "Oh my god, I have no chance of competing again." Like, if this is what college baseball is, like this was a full-grown man, and I was just like, "Here I am."
He wasn't one of those
18
guys
years
who was
old.
like also a fullback on the.
No, he wasn't. He
football
wasn't
team.
that, but
Okay.
he looked like one. He looked like
yeah.
and I mean, just a man. And I'm walking in there, and I felt like a little boy. Yeah.
The debut day feels like one of those milestone days in your life. Like for regular people, maybe it's the day you were married or the day your first kid was born or something. And you remember things about it, but it seems like it would just fly by. Like it would be a day lived in fast forward, like almost like nothing else.
It is, yeah. Like the heart rate. I mean, you're just trying to control your heart rate, right? Like to keep your heart in your chest, basically, because it's and I don't remember what the attendance was, but it felt like there were 1 million people, in the stands. And it just, it's a special moment. You're just trying to control your emotions and play the game that how to play, that you've been doing your whole life. But just, never on that stage before. So yeah, it's always a special one.
I happen to know the attendance, 25,135 in attendance for the debut of Jed Lowry. I think it was Ed Montague, the third base umpire, that was laughing at you for trying to catch the ball just 20 rows in the stands.
Could feel my anxiety.
Well, just with Jack with real quick was just the one thing that stands out from his swing data other than the elite bat speed was he makes contact 9 inches, or he made contact 9 inches closer to his body than average. So he really let the ball travel. I first of all, it's one game. I guess with that kind of bat speed, I think I'm okay with it. I feel like he has enough bat speed to have oppo power, and the tilt is fine. He's not super flat or super tilted, so he's got like
what was the tilt?
Shape.
I didn't see
30
that.
30 degrees. It's kind of like middle-ish. It's a little flattish, but that it's not super flat. It's not Junior Cabrera is like 26 or something. So he should be able to hit high fastballs. He doesn't have the super tilted swing, and if he can hit high fastballs, that means he can let some of those high fastballs travel and still hit them out. And since he has that elite bat speed, this could be a good news that he's letting the ball travel. Like, I don't know. And it also allows, if he does make contact but not hit for power, it does allow for an easy adjustment, which is like, okay, you're gonna have to go get the ball a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a level of comfort that happens where you have to get in and see big league pitching, get some at bats, and you just he'll start to understand his strike zone, the pitches that he can and can't drive in the big leagues, and like I said, he looks like a kid that has the mechanics to just play free, right? And I think as he as he matures in his career, he will have the ability to make those minor adjustments. But like I said, I'm very excited about the about what I saw in the first 5 at bats.
I had this weird brain fart, but I saw from Jeff Zimmerman did this work that showed that like kind of pull goes up as you age, just generally, and he was sort of referring it to like, in order to get to the power you once had, you have to kind of pull more as you get older. Like your bat speed's kind of going down, so you kind of have to take more shots, take more chances, go get that ball a little bit more to kind of have the same power. And so you can see a little bit in Mike Trout as he's gotten older. Swing and miss has gone up. Pull in the air has gone up. He's become a little bit more of a like, all or nothing slugger. Now, I think he's a inner circle Hall of Famer. I'm not saying anything bad. I'm just saying this is sort of, he's showing you what age can do. So I wonder if you had an aging curve for contact point, if it goes from deep to further out in front.
Yeah, I mean, and I think as you mature and you have more bats and you have more experience, you also know when to pick your spots, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know when to pick your spots, when the appropriate time, like what the situation is calling for. Like, your first couple years in the league, you're just going on instinct, right? It's like
I'm the ball. You have to see what they're doing.
Literally, like, you're surviving on instinct. It's a fire hose, right? Like there's so many things coming at you, and at the same time you're having to perform and try to go out and help the team win while you have all this information and all these new inputs that you've never experienced in your life happening at the same time.
Yeah, I think I'm so mad that I missed David Ortiz, but David Ortiz, I think, is actually kind of a good example of this, where he generally pulled more over time, and he generally pulled more in the air over time, and he was. It's like it doesn't sound nice to say he was like the best guess hitter of all time, but he just anticipated with the best. Like he was like I had the story that he was feeding people in the dugout what pitch was coming. He would just be up there, top step, being like, slider's coming, and so that's the sort of you gain that anticipation over time where you're like, I've seen this dude. He's done this a million times. He's about to double up on the slider. Like I know
exactly. Yeah, and once again, like you're kind of picking your moments. When you have that type, you have that many at bats against a certain guy, and like that where it becomes more of a chess match. You know where to take your chances. Versus early on, you got no idea who these guys are. They're, it could be any pitcher. It doesn't matter, right? Like you're trying to find a pitch that you can handle. It has nothing to do with the strategy of it or the chess moves that could happen. Versus, like a David, where he's got, he's seen all these guys enough that he knows what they have and when to take his chances.
Yeah, that's also why I think he had that DH skill, which is just the skill is to be mentally engaged with every pitch in the at bat, and to just basically be like almost like a second manager. Just be like, that the way to kind of stay engaged when you're not physically engaged is to be mentally engaged and just sort of try to anticipate every single pitch, even when you're not at the plate.
Yep.
Yeah. Definitely seemed like a strength of David Ortiz. I was looking at the Jac Caglianone projections. There's a little bit of a range, but the Bat X, 245, 307, 404, 9 homers in 72 games, almost 20 homer pace, basically 20 homers if you double it up and give him a few extra games. Like that seems doable, and it seems pretty impactful for a Royals team that has generally struggled to put runs on the board throughout this season. Let's get to some other baseball news you should know. Corbin Burnes getting a second opinion from Dr. Neil Elatrosh on his elbow. That one, I mean, you could see when he was talking on the mound, like basically F my elbow. That usually leads to surgery, but we'll see what that second opinion actually reveals for Corbin Burnes. He's now officially on the IL. Not a surprise there.
I feel like second opinions themselves are just not good. Although Jed has some experience in this matter, sometimes a second and third opinion was in Jed's benefit. I feel like it took a while to figure some of those things out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that if the ultimate goal is to get the player, healthy and get him back on the field to be productive, then and I think from a team's perspective too, if you have confirmation and quite frankly, like, it goes, a lot of that second opinion falls on the player, right? And so now it's the player who's coming back, and obviously the team has the right to say no. The team ultimately controls all of your medical decisions, right? When you sign that contract, they control all of your medical decisions. And even if you have a second opinion that says, the recommendation of surgery is necessary, the team can say no.
You can ignore it, yeah. But I think if I was running a team, oh my God, would I never ignore that, dude? Because you just had an example of Yordan Alvarez saying, yo, my wrist still hurts. Can we go get that imaging? You never ordered the second image. Can we go, like, the one after the inflammation has gone down? Can we get that image? Oh, look, it's broken. Hey, so if I don't know, if I was running a team,
I mean, that's
give anybody any test they wanted, man. I'd listen to the player, because the player's the one. It's his body, man. He's the one. I'm not going to have a doctor be like, no, it doesn't hurt. Shut up. We got the player. So tell him it doesn't. Nothing's wrong here. Oh yeah. Well, tell it to him. He can't. It takes him like 20 minutes to get out of bed in the morning.
Yep, I've got personal experience with that, and particularly with with initial images that don't reveal an underlying problem that has to be addressed. So I agree with you. I would always I think siding on the coming down on the side and listening to the player more is where I think the appropriate place for these medical decisions are. But once again, the club does have that right, and sometimes they exercise it.
I guess it might be a little bit more complicated on the pitcher side, because a pitcher might be pushing for surgery because they feel like the outcomes are all positive. And so they're just like, let's just get the surgery and get it over with. Whereas a team might say, you're not really focusing on the sort of 15% of Tommy John returners that are never really come back. And, we just had an example last night. Spencer Strider, is not who he was before surgery. He's 95 now instead of 97. The breaking ball, which used to be 86 plus, there's kind of a dividing line for sliders at 85. If it's 86 plus, the slider is almost always good, and if it's 84 minus, it's not always bad, but it's like, it has to be really special to kind of get to be a good slider at like 83. He went from 86 on the slider to like 83. So, he's now throwing middle like he used to, because we used to say Hunter Green, Spencer Strider, they can throw middle. We've talked about this on the show a lot. And you can't throw middle at 95 the same way that you can at 97. So I will take a look at some point at internal brace, because there's some rumblings of people being like, is internal brace not having the same outcomes? But it is pretty early on that surgery. We're talking about it being really popular over the last like 3-4 years. So
yeah. And I think, to reiterate, right, like, there's always risk with surgery. And so, it's definitely, I always viewed it as last resort, but if we've tried everything else and, the problem is staying the same or getting worse, then that risk is worth it, right? To then go into that surgery. But you don't want to jump in and make that decision too soon. But like I said, if you've tried everything, if you've exhausted every other option, and it's if the problem is getting worse, or then what's the downside? because you're going to end up being a non-productive player anyway. So you might as well take the opportunity to get the guy back healthy and have him productive. And to Strider's point is like, yeah, I mean, but that's also like a natural agent thing too, right? He's not going to throw 100 miles an hour the rest of his life. And so, from a hitting perspective, we were talking about like taking your shots and, knowing the zone a little bit more. Somebody who's going to come back from surgery and potentially has lost some velocity, they're going to have to focus a little bit more on on command,
adding pitches, command, wider arsenal,
sequencing. And I think that's a natural progression of pitching too. As you age, you're going to lose velocity, and you have to focus on the things that still make you productive.
Yeah, I did an aging curve for fastball usage, and it just goes down. As for starters, it's because they're using their other pitches.
Yep.
I think if you were predicting Spencer Strider's pitch mix going into 2026, like this time next year, basically, what will his first 2 months look like? It's not going to be 54% four seam anymore. It's just not. Like there's going to be more changeups, more curves, something.
But a little bit hard to do that coming right off of surgery because you're not supposed to throw the breaking ball at first, and there's different protocols that people have in place, and so maybe it's not the best time to add a new pitch, while you're trying to just get your arm back to normal. So I'm more hopeful about Spencer Strider next year than I am necessarily about the rest of this year.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Strider. The Braves were being what I think we described as cautious with some of his rehab starts earlier on, and we had a discussion around just let him get that work in the big leagues, right? And I think I mentioned a few weeks ago, I was like, no, that there's the emotional aspect of it too, and like making sure he finds his stride and feels comfortable. And so, you're looking at what he's running out there right now. There's still some buildup that needs to happen. And it would have been way premature if he would have, jumped right back into the major leagues a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I guess I got a little excited.
Well, I mean, I get it, right? Like you look at the upside. You're like, okay, we need this guy in our rotation as soon as possible.
The Braves were scuttling,
yeah, exactly. I'm not saying the logic was wrong. I'm just saying that there is a build-up process, especially coming back from a major surgery like that.
I was just thinking about this in the context of Eury Pérez, who's going to make his return to the Marlins on Monday, and they took the longest possible route with his rehab assignment by design, really built him up slowly. I think it's because now as he gets back, he can work more like a regular starter without hitting the innings cap for the season, right? They just kind of slow played it a little bit. But given some of the returns we've seen from major elbow surgery this year, as good as he's looked in rehab, I still am very cautious about my expectations, even though I'm excited to see Eury Pérez back on a big league mound. Next Monday it comes up.
Yeah, I'm excited about some of the stuff I'm hearing about, adding a sinker and, so that the stuff is all there and, reading the accounts. And so I was fairly aggressive in my ranking of him and I'm pretty excited about him. But it's just risk, as you can see on his own team. Sandy Alcantara has taken a long time to get it all back.
The Giants made a bunch of moves. So let's dig into this real quick. Lamont Wade Jr., Sam Huff DFA'd. Dominic Smith signed to a one-year deal, major league deal, as a replacement for Wade. Daniel Johnson, an outfielder, and then Andrew Kisner, the backup catcher, added to the roster. Christian Koss optioned down, and then Bryce Eldridge got bumped up to AAA. So changes happening here for the Giants. This is a lineup that I think by WOBA is 23rd in the league with a 302 entering play on Wednesday. It's going to be an uphill battle for them with the current group to score a lot of runs. So I think if they're going to get a lot better, some of that's going to be trade deadline additions. And to get there, they just have to continue playing as well as they played up to this point, right? You look at this team in a loaded NL West, 39.7% chance of making the playoffs. They're 33-28, only 4 back of the Dodgers. So it all looks pretty good on paper. I took all of these moves to be the clouds gathering for an eventual promotion of Bryce Eldridge. Maybe we're talking about Eldridge debuting after the deadline, 2 months from now, in addition to whatever other players they're able to acquire between now and then.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's the corresponding move here was Dominic Smith being signed. He opted out of his minor league deal with the Yankees, and there's a little bit of intrigue there where like he's pulling the ball and hitting the ball in the air. The pull rate is higher than it's ever been in the major leagues for a full season. And he's always been a guy who has a decent eye in terms of walks and can make contact. So if he can pull the ball and hit the ball with authority, that is something that's sorely missing. The Giants are last in hard hit rate. And the thing that makes it so difficult, they have the 11th highest strikeout rate. So they're not doing either thing super well in terms of either hitting for contact or hitting for power. But I agree with you. And actually, I almost feel bad for Dom Smith because this is an opportunity, and I'm happy for him to get it. But he knows he's got somebody breathing down his throat. You know, he knows he's got Bryce Eldridge in just moved to AAA, and he knows that he may have 2 weeks. You know, what does that do to your plate discipline? What does that do to your approach at the plate? Like how comfortable can you get? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're speculating on where Eldridge ends up, right? And there's obviously a big time prospect that has a high ceiling, but I think if you're Dom Smith, you go up there and you play your game, right? Whatever opportunities you get, you play your game. And I think this, like to your point, like being a little more pull in the air, it's this natural progression that happens. How do you consistently do damage as you get older in your career? And hopefully Dom is in a good spot where he's knows when to take those chances, because the guy, he's from what I've seen, like batting practice and the way that he can hit the ball, he's got bat speed. I don't know how it shows up on some of the metrics in the game, but I've seen it in batting practice. And so just learning when to take your shots. And once again, this is a guy that I root for. I love Dom, and I'm really happy to see him get this chance. And if I'm the Giants, I'm excited to have the player. And for however long that is, if Eldridge pushes him out, that so be it. But I think for him, you just have to focus on your at bats, what you can do, and quite frankly, if that means that Eldridge is the guy in San Francisco and you go and take some at bats, then there's maybe there's an opportunity somewhere else in the big leagues that exists. So you're not necessarily worried from a player's perspective. Like you're not looking backwards to see who's coming up behind you. You're focused on what you can do today to help yourself and the club put the club in a position to win.
Yeah, I think even on that roster, I just was talking about some of Girard Encarnacion's flaws, and he's very different than Dom Smith in that he has elite bat speed, but struggles to make contact.
Yeah.
And then the Wilmer Flores is there too. So it's there's 2 or 3 spots there that could be in flux. So you never know, who takes the job, and they're as a team though, you have some sympathy for them because they're just trying to find some way to toggle the dials to get more power out of this lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my guess is the power they've got from Wilmer Flores up to this point doesn't hold at its current level, right? 10 homers through 60 games is a surprise to all of us. You'll probably get a lot more from Willy Adames the rest of the way than you've had through the first 60 games. So basically flip their lines, and then you've kind of got that built-in fallback. It's just weird because Patrick Bailey is just not the same guy. I know he's had, I think, multiple concussions now. And I think the one last year, since then, he just has looked like a completely different player at the plate. And I know it's always been a glove first sort of profile, but to see 239 WOBA, a 31.8% K rate, that's pretty surprising to me. I thought Bailey was going to be like a top 15, top 20 catcher offensively, but then elite because of his glove. And that's been one of the other kind of key missing pieces for them so far. Do have to give Elliot Ramos tip of the cap, though. Holy cow, he is playing exceptionally well right now. 139 WRC plus, easily the highest on the team right now. 11 homers through 59 games. Like a great story of a little bit of a late bloomer, a guy that really kind of lost that prospect sheen before breaking through a year ago and showing all of us that what he did last season wasn't a fluke.
I mean, the only guy who's ever, only right-hander who's ever gone into McCovey Cove, has now added a pull dimension to his game. Just went out in yesterday's game to center, which is a feat in San Francisco. It's cold. Just a really dynamic player that, kind of a 5-tool aspect of, maybe the hit tool isn't his very best tool, but also beloved in the clubhouse and in the fandom. So, just a really great story.
I love that we're talking about a 25-year-old, like, somebody who is potentially on the cusp of aging out or not like living up to the hype, right? And like, yeah, I get it. You want to make conclusions and start drawing conclusions from the sample size, but yeah, I mean, this is a guy 20 as a 24-year-old, hit 270 with 22 homers in the big leagues. Like that's an impressive number. I mean, the on-base percentage is, he's not a guy that's going to walk a ton. And he chases some, so there'll be some natural shift in his approach if he's going to stay productive as he gets older. But you're still talking about a 25-year-old kid that I think has some more upside in the production. So exciting young player.
I think they've been saying it for years. Growth is not linear. Just because you struggle for a little while at AA or AAA, it doesn't mean that you're cooked. It just means you got to make some adjustments. It's a game of failure.
Baseball is hard. I think people, it's easy to start drawing conclusions from some of these numbers and take the emotions and the growth out of the game. I think at some point you have to draw the line, but I think it would be a mistake when you start judging a 25-year-old that's had 500 at bats in the big leagues, that he's not going to be able to do it. But I'm happy to see this guy produce.
He's also kind of interesting from a segue standpoint in that he has this difficult park that he's dealing with. And, I get some sense, there was a sense that I got from, I watched him in Modesto and I thought about him a lot coming up with the Giants. And I thought, repeatedly, why didn't the Farhan Giants give this guy a shot? And I wonder if to some extent they thought, hey, he's just a right-hander with push power. Like, he's just not a good fit for our park. Like, I wonder if they thought of him as like, this is a guy who we're going to use a little bit and then we're going to trade at some point. It's just not going to fit here. And then you give him a chance and he becomes the first right-hander to ever go, splash. And you're like, oh, maybe it's not a great fit for a lot of people, but if he proves he can do it, why can't he hit some doubles off the brick walls out there too? Like, it's not impossible, San Francisco itself remains like kind of a conundrum for me because generally I thought Willy Adames could hit for okay power there because there is a little bit, sometimes you can get a little bit of wind going towards left field. Left field is not very deep there. The cars out there are like a attainable home run distance, and like people there's like some cartoon cars out there, like that's part of the wall that seems attainable. And I've always thought that for right-handed power, it's not easy, but easier. And that's not something that's captured. You can go into the park factors, and the way the park factors are done is you take this hitter and you pair him, you say, okay, Jed Lowry in San Francisco and Jed Lowry outside of San Francisco, pair him up. This is what he does this is what he does there, and this is what he does there. And this is how many plate appearances he has in San Francisco. And so we will weight his difference in production by how many plate appearances he has in San Francisco, and we add them all up. Now, that's obviously going to have a lot of noise in it because the players themselves, and that's why you do 3-year versions of this. So you take 3 years of players. So you have a lot of sample, but it's still going to be heavily moved by, like, let's say Barry Bonds is in your sample. You might think, well, San Francisco's not that bad for left-handers. And you might be wrong. So, that's an inherent flaw in park factors. But you had a story that you wanted to point us to about Brandon Nimmo and Chase Field. I mean,
Citi Field. Yeah. No, I saw this in the Athletic the other day where Nimmo, hit one ball 104.5 miles an hour at a 23 degree launch angle, and it went 412 feet for a home run to left center field. Same ball, Citi Field. I don't know the game in terms of like day night, but 105 hit harder, 27 degree launch angle, arguably better, and it goes 332 feet. So like that, I experienced some of this at the Coliseum. I mean, I went back after finding this, I went back and looked at my splits, and the majority of those at bats happened in Oakland. And my home career average as a right-handed hitter, where the balls carry to left field better in Oakland, 293, right? Home versus righties, 239. Then you look at away totals, lefty 246 as a right-handed hitter. So I was essentially a 50 point lower on the road than I was at home. And then my average on the road as a left-handed hitter was 262 versus 240 at home. And so like some of these balls, and I could go back and look at some of these balls. Like I watched Matt Olson hit a ball 110 miles an hour at like a 32 degree launch angle in the Coliseum, and it didn't even make it to the warning track. So like some of these, depending on the elements of of these games, like this Nimmo one is a perfect example. This is arguably a ball that is hit better. It's half a mile faster at an ideal launch angle of 27 degrees. And you're talking about an 80-foot difference in actual outcome.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I know is super compelling to players. You asked me about it as a player, and Yonder Alonso asked me about it as a player, and we tried to do something where we modeled expected distances based on launch angle and try to do like basically a heat map of the outfield. And that was something that I did based on a question you did for Oakland. And a heat map of the outfield so you could see where balls went further than expected and where they went shorter than expected. And one thing that we found was that there might have actually been in Oakland certain sort of wind power out, like wind alleys where the wind does go through and it's fine. Mm-hmm. And then other places where the wind stops. You said that Mount Davis was sort of, and I think we found a little bit of evidence with it. There were parts where like the wind hit Mount Davis, came back and pushed balls down. Mm-hmm. Where Mount Davis ended, there were some parts where the wind would go through. And so you would find the balls would actually go a little bit further than expected, just around those corners. But then at Mount Davis just sort of died. Yeah. And so that's a kind of really, I think it's really interesting to the player because that tells them a little bit like, how should I play at home? Like, what should I do?
I absolutely. I had a different approach when I played in Oakland than I did on the road. I knew that if I went up and I tried to lift balls to the pull side in Oakland, it was going to lead to poor results. That, because I knew that wind, like I would always look up and I knew that there was those tunnels on either side of Mount Davis. And if I looked up and I saw that flag in the right center tunnel blowing out, I knew the wind was actually blowing in, right? Because what the stadium did between Mount Davis and the bowl on the right side is it just whipped that wind back towards left field. So if that wind, was escaping that tunnel that way, the majority of the wind was actually being pushed by the stadium out to left or in.
Yeah, and wind is a great piece of chaos. If you've watched a local cast that has the sort of wind map at the beginning, Oakland does this sometimes. I've seen it on a bunch of casts. You'll be amazed by how minute how different the little wind patterns are. It could be blowing out to right and blowing in from left. And there could be just there are all these. And when you're doing wind management, for a architectural project, and they come out and they measure it for building a building or something, they will measure wind like every 10 feet up, for hundreds of feet. And in these, they will create an entire map. The way that the wind people are doing it for baseball is that they've basically created a wind model of how wind moves dynamically through space. And so then they can map the space, and then they can basically use the model to project how the wind would move through that space. And so that's a good way to do it. But I think it does bring up a point here. So Nimmo goes in the story, he goes, and this is a great story by Tim Britton. He goes in the story, he goes to Joe Lefkowitz, the Mets senior manager of baseball analytics integration. He says, how much could temperature play a part? And if it didn't feel windy, but could the wind have knocked it down that much? What about spin? And Lefkowitz guessed that maybe those variables explain about 12 feet of difference in ball's flight. I would suggest that he's wrong, because I think if you did know, and he mentions batted ball spin, right? I think if you did know batted ball spin and the wind and the temperature, and if you knew the wind in very precise directions in this way, I think that the noise is not 68 feet. I think you could actually figure out why that ball didn't go. I would say it would probably had a little bit more side spin than the other one. I would guess that the wind, and the reason that I have this guess, and I think that I can sort of show you a little bit of where this comes from. I hadn't actually seen this before. There's a piece, I love it when you are playing around Savant and you're like, what is this? And so Jed, I was trying to show Jed the different park factors. And so if you go to StatCast and you go to the park factors and then you click on like Coors Field, and then you're on the Coors Field page, at the top it says primary park factors. That's calculated the way we talk about it, and matching players to themselves, all that sort of stuff, right? The next one is speed and angle, and that's calculated a little bit differently. That's saying if you have a ball that was hit 95, like the Nimmo example, if you have this ball that was hit 100 miles an hour at 27 degrees, and how would that do here versus Coors Field versus wherever, so you can match balls instead of players. And I actually like that better, because you're taking the player out of it, and not as much noise. You're just saying this ball was hit like this. How would balls like this do in all these different places? So I like speed and angle factors. But he pointed out, oh, look, Coors Field adds 16 feet. And then there's this little thing here that says extra feet of distance versus average. Click here for more. And when I clicked here for more, I saw a page I'd never seen before. Park Factors leaderboard, where it shows extra distance added. Now, Coors Field is number 1, 16 feet. Sutter Health Park, number 2, 10 feet. Well, what's even more interesting is it's broken it down into each of the different ways that the ball is affected. So there's a temperature park factor here, an elevation park factor, and then environment, which I would say is shorthand for wind. And that is maybe the sort of 68 feet of unknown. They're just sort of saying that's the last bit, right? And so interesting that D-backs field plus 10 feet of distance, it has a temperature park factor because it not only is it temperature controlled while other places can be cold, but the door's open, so Arizona weather is going to get in, like it's going to be warmer than average in that place.
And the elevation, right? Like even just at 1,000 feet of elevation, it's adding an extra 3 feet. And then you look at a place like Colorado at 5,100, adding 23 feet just because of the elevation.
Yeah.
And then if you look at temperature, right? And I'm assuming they're accounting for the entire season, because they're saying the temperature is a -4, but that's, you're really talking about negatives early in the season. Once it warms up in Colorado, it's 90 degrees. I assume, they say every 10 degrees Fahrenheit adds 1% distance here. And, so I think once it starts warming up in Colorado, that 16 feet probably goes even higher in the summer, because now the temperature is probably on the plus side of this.
Right there. We've been talking about monthly park factors. And then this last little thing that sort of links it back to Nimmo is I can see how Lefkowitz came up with this number because they have a -5 feet for Citi Field in this thing, and it's -5 feet. It's -4.6 for temperature, -2.3 for elevation because it's right on the water, and then 1.6 for environmental. So they think that sometimes the wind helps. I would suggest that the wind in Citi Field is extremely variable. It's right by the water. And so I would suggest that that's why he got to this. Okay, well, I've got, it's normally -6, maybe with some extra wind, it's 12 feet. That's where he's getting to. I'm suggesting that wind park factor can be enormous. It can, if you look at the wind park factor right now at Sutter or in Tampa or in Wrigley, it is enormous. And I think that there could be just a little bit of a jet stream, that little bit of like one of those little mini arrows that he just caught one of those mini arrows in the wrong direction. And then batted ball spin, I think, can be on the level of 10 feet of difference. If you really hook a ball or you slice a ball or you get it flush, I think that can be sort of a major part of distance. So I'm suggesting that it's more like 30 or 40 feet we could explain. Maybe there's an extra 20 feet there that we couldn't explain. But this all comes down to one question that I have is, do we philosophically want out of park factors to be able to say that we've really drilled down to every single piece of information that we could have on this ball? We have the batted ball spin, we have the launch angle, we have the exit velocity, we have the wind that day, we have the temperature that day, we have the micro wind that day, we have all of this. We know the mass of his bat. We know every little aspect. Do we really is that what we want? Maybe the answer is yes. I'm not trying to set up a yes or like a no, but is that would we want to be able to say, okay, that should have been a homer, or that should have been a double or a single or whatever, and wash all players through this and sort of have a park? Is that what we want? We want to drill all the way down and just really, I think maybe the answer is yes, because you have to think about like Hall of Fame stuff. Like, would it be unfair just to be like, no batter that hits in Citi Field can go to the Hall of Fame because, or San Francisco, like they're just not going to hit enough homers and we're not going to give them enough credit. I don't know.
Or it's balancing, right? It's a guy that hit in those parks gets extra credit. I do. And then, but I think player evaluation too. And like,
they do want to do that. Player evaluation wants that. They want to drill all the way down. Yeah,
absolutely.
But I wonder if the fan answers the same. I suggest that to our listeners. If how granular would you want your park factors to be? It does become a question. Like sometimes when you get to the end, and I'm voting on the Cy Young, like, do I want to know how that pitcher would have done, and all these pitchers would have done in front of a neutral defense, in a neutral park? Do I want to educate all that out and really figure out who was the best this year? Or do I look at some of the things that actually happened and, give some credit to that too? So, I don't know. There's some like head things that happens. Like you will pitch differently in San Francisco than you would somewhere else because it's San Francisco.
Absolutely.
So if I dock you and say, oh, well, you pitched to contact in San Francisco, and that's not great. If you pitch that way in a neutral park, then you would have given up more hits. Right?
Yeah, I think that's one step too far.
Then I'm like, well, now I'm docking you for pitching to contact in San Francisco, where you're like, dude, I did it because it's San Francisco and it was a good idea.
I was more efficient. I threw more innings with better ratios. So like, why are you mad at me for doing the thing that was optimal for the environment I was in?
Yeah. So I think there are some interesting philosophical things here, but I know that this is something that players talk about a lot. I mean, it's especially in the age of exit velocity and launch angle. The first time that I ever heard exit velocity and launch angle used by players was in this context. dude, I hit that ball at 30 degrees, 105, and it didn't go out. What the hell?
That was never me. That was never me.
Never you. Only Matt Olson, sure.
I mean, spin efficiency for hitters does seem pretty important in this case. You suggested the possibility that Nimmo hit the ball that didn't go as far with a lot more side spin. That certainly satisfies at least a good part of the explanation. The drag on the ball. What if it was a particularly dead baseball that he hit too? I mean, this just sounds like a combination of 3 or 4 factors that we can't easily see with our eyes, that are all very real and very easy to start to break down if you end up having all of those variables at your disposal. Like it makes sense the further you drill into it, but on the surface, I'd react the same way Nimmo did. Be like, wait a minute, that should have at least been within 10 feet or 15 feet of the ball I crushed. 80 feet doesn't make sense.
I got it wrong. Justin Choi said that on Fangraphs that it could be as much as 40 or 50 feet based on batted ball spin.
Yeah, I mean, spin efficiency is huge. I don't know that much about golf, but I would imagine it's a huge part of why the best golfers get extra distance too.
No doubt.
Yeah.
All right, more to come on spin efficiency as we bring on scientists to explain it to us, because I don't think we're going to solve it completely on our own, despite our best efforts. You guys put something on the rundown that I thought was kind of interesting. It happened over the weekend in a game between Oregon and Utah Valley. And it's a play we used to see a lot in the big leagues. I do have the video if you're watching on YouTube. If it actually wants to load and play, it's a pretty big file. It might not. But okay, so if you're just following along on the podcast, the audio version, fly ball to left field, runner on third is going to tag up, and there's a play at the plate. And as we often used to see, there's a collision at the plate. The runner goes back, slaps the plate. It looks like a run that brings Oregon within, I believe, 1 run in the 8th inning, scores.
Tied.
And
that was the tying run.
Okay, so I saw the bug after they took the run off the board. So that was a tying run in a critical spot, and the video doesn't want to play. Upon review, the player gets ejected for a malicious collision, more or less, which is pretty bizarre because when you watched it in real time, even it didn't look like those collisions never look good. But if you're grading them, that one didn't look horrible. And then when you watch it on review slowed down, oh, good, it is going to load. You can actually see the way it looks like the runner was going to slide and then decided not to at the last second, and then kind of just pulled back, tucked in his arms, and just collided with the catcher, which, is going to happen.
There was some indecision on the runner's part, but I think he was a little surprised to see the catcher in his lane, and he's supposed to get to the plate. Like, I don't know what the runner was supposed to do otherwise. Like, this runner is, yeah.
I look at that play, and that you're putting runners in danger by making this call, because that runner is going to the plate and he's slowing up and just like in all reality trying to avoid that collision. But if that play happens in the major leagues, and if the catcher catches that ball and tags him out in the major leagues, that's overturned the other way for blocking the plate. The catcher is sitting in the baseline without the ball, and that you, as a runner, you have no choice. There's nowhere else to go. I view that as putting the runner in danger and setting a precedent where you're putting more runners in danger, because now that runner has nowhere to go. Like you basically, what are you supposed to stop running because the catcher's sitting in front of you? Like, to me, I think that was a really poor decision by the NCAA.
This is a little bit of just arguing for argument's sake, but just say they know the rule. They know what the rule is. They know that catcher's allowed to be there in college. Maybe they do. They should. Should he have run to the side of the plate and tried to do like a swim move, like slide by the plate? Like, should he have just avoided the catcher and tried to touch the plate from the side?
But look how far out in front the catcher was. Like he's out in front of the plate. Where is the runner supposed to go? He's in front of the plate. Like,
you would have to run out of the base path almost.
Like you're around the home plate. Like there is nowhere to go. Like he's slowing up right there and like almost, he's putting his hands, like there was no like push through, right? Like he's putting his hands down. Like, he's trying to avoid a major collision. He doesn't push through the guy. He just has his hands in front.
You can see
like
his
just
first couple steps the first couple steps before he goes into the collision are actually slow down steps. Like you can see it in his legs that he's bracing and slowing down. He's not like Pete Rosing where he's like turning into like
spearing
Superman.
him.
Yeah. He's like trying to stop running,
Yes. And I, like I said, I think that's a really dangerous precedent to not only overturn that call, but then to call it a malicious act and to suspend, eject and suspend the kid for a game. That's a really bad precedent because you're setting up a lot of base runners to get injured.
They got eliminated the next day too, right? Like that their season ended earlier than expected as a result of this sequence of events. So I mean, if you're an Oregon fan, you're upset. If you're a senior, that your last game is you getting ejected and you're suspended for the game your team gets eliminated in or something, that would be a bad situation too. It's just, I don't know. Like I know there are simple things you can do with the paint on the field. You can make lanes, you can make boxes, you can make extra things. And there should always be, no matter how you want to write the rules in college, if you want to have different rules in college than the big leagues, fine. That's your prerogative. I think it's weird. Make the rules the same, make it consistent. But if you don't have an established place for the runner to go, you're putting everybody in danger because the catcher's looking for the ball in a lot of those cases. Those are bang, bang plays. So he's going to set up and look for where the ball's coming from, not know exactly where the runner is going to be coming from. And you're going to
run the runner runs around him,
and broken legs,
hits the plate, and is called out for running out of the base pass. Like then you're just like, what are we doing here? Like that runner, only thing he can do is just stop. Like, come on, like he's trying to score. Like what? Yeah, I thought it was a bad weekend for college baseball in particular. I just wanted to point out that Wake Forest manager acting really, really poorly and using a homophobic slur about an opposing player and getting caught on camera. Just awful. And shout out to that player for hitting a home run and sealing the game and just being himself no matter what this guy is saying about him. So it would not make me want to play for Wake Forest. I'll tell you that. So I don't think it was a great day for college baseball, a great couple of days. So clean it up, guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. Clean it up indeed. We are going to go on our way out the door. A reminder, you can join our Discord with the link in the show description. You can find Eno on Bluesky, Sarris.bscott@social. I am DVR.bscott@social. Jed is over on Instagram, just Jed Lowry. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.